So, coming into his college career, Jalen Johnson decided to attend Duke University, and he was pretty much seen as like a top 10 player in the country. So, the standards were really held high for him, and people had real hopes for him going into Duke. But during his career at Duke University, it didn't really go exactly to plan, as Duke had one of their worst seasons in recent memory, and Jalen Johnson had a solid but not great freshman campaign, but that didn't stop him from entering his name in the 2021 NBA draft, as his high ceiling would make him an interesting prospect for plenty of teams that weren't selecting in that upper tier top 10 group, and the Hawks were one of those teams. They decided to take a swing on Jalen Johnson with the 20th pick in that year's class, and so far, that draft pick looks to be a great one by the Atlanta Hawks in their front office, because Jalen Johnson might just be the most underrated young star in the entire league. Johnson showed improvement last season, especially once Atlanta moved off of longtime Atlanta Hawk John Collins, who was always on the trade block for some reason, and they finally decided to get rid of him, which freed up playing time for the young wing out of Duke, and his stats definitely reflected that, getting an increase from basically 15 minutes per game the year prior to around 34 minutes per game this past season. And he went from a 5-point per game, 4 rebound per game player to last season averaging 16 and 8 and nearly 4 assists per game, putting him in the most improved player conversation. And the one thing that I think was nice to see that season was a nice improvement from beyond the arc. I think that was like a cherry on top kind of situation, because coming into Duke even, Jalen Johnson wasn't seen as like a shooter. He was seen as like a slasher / point forward kind of guy. And for him to be like a fairly decent shooter, especially with the expectations, I think that's really nice to see. He made some real strides. I don't think he's a great shooter, but it's nice to see that he's not like Ben Simmons from beyond the arc. So you have to give him credit for making himself decent enough. But now you look at him this season, and he's getting even better just as an overall player. I mean, he's off to a great and really underappreciated start. He's averaging 20, 10, and 5. I mean, not a lot of guys can say they're putting up those kind of numbers. And he's doing it on similar shooting splits from last season, which is kind of nice. Averaging a steal and a block per game with that 20, 10, and 5. And just to put into perspective, based on a stat that I saw and kind of was like the inspiration for this video, because it showed just how great he's really been and nobody's talking about it. The only guys to average 20 plus, 10 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists with a steal and a block for an entire season are the likes of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Giannis, Chris Webber, Larry Bird, Joel Embiid, Kevin Garnett, and DeMarcus Cousins. Those are all Hall of Fame caliber talents. And Jalen Johnson, so far to start this season, is doing something that only those guys have done for a season. And I don't understand why his play just doesn't get talked about enough. I mean, we talk about guys like Franz Wagner, who is playing great, and he's having, obviously, a better season than Jalen Johnson. But we talk about a lot of good young players in this league, and we never mention Jalen Johnson, and he's literally just 22 years old. I don't know why he doesn't get talked about by the mainstream NBA media. Maybe it's because he plays for the Hawks. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But nonetheless, Jalen Johnson has become someone that I believe is a cornerstone for this Hawks franchise. I'm not saying he's your franchise player. I don't really know if he is or not. But I'm pretty sure if you told someone that Jalen Johnson would become like a cornerstone piece for this Hawks team back when he was selected in the late first round in 2021, I'm pretty sure not many people would have believed you. And they probably would have said, that's great, because I just don't see it happening. And now you see Jalen Johnson, and he's playing with Trae Young, and he's a great young co-star to pair alongside Trae Young. Now, obviously, I do think if we're talking about the Hawks in general here, they still would benefit from probably having someone either better or on the same tier level as Trae Young to really make them a stronger contender in the East. But I really believe in Jalen Johnson's abilities, and I think he's like a really good third wheel kind of guy, especially if they can find that player, because like I always say, this is a wings league for the most part, and especially in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you look at the teams that are at the top, it's Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges are really good wings as well. Well, Mikal's struggling, but, he has some pedigree, I guess. And, it's a wings league. Those guys are the guys you're going to have to go through most nights, especially in Boston, to really get to where you want to get to. And Jalen Johnson proving to be one of the better wings in this league is a great sign to see if you're a Hawks fan. And they do have decent wings in Atlanta besides Jalen Johnson, but it's kind of question marks right now because, yes, they did have the number one pick this past season, or the number one pick going into this season. And I don't really know how I feel about it. I mean, I guess you have to give him time, obviously. He's just a rookie, but this isn't like a strong draft class, so we don't know what he'll become. Obviously, they got DeAndre Hunter, he is who he is at this point, I think. I don't think there's any way of him getting like that much better. So for Jalen Johnson to go out there and to be like an almost all-star caliber player, that's great for this Hawks team. And to be honest, I really believe just in his abilities. I just believe in Jalen Johnson's abilities to put up these kind of numbers any season. I think it's definitely possible. I mean, obviously, like I already mentioned, he might not be a second option or first option kind of player, but it's gotten to a point where I think he is probably one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA, and we really need to give him some thought and some like just consideration or some appreciation for what he's doing, because right now, I mean, the stats back it up. He's off to a really great start in his 4th NBA season. Anyways, that's going to do it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my previous video on Dylan Harper and his recent success at Rutgers. This has been a checkup, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.